The cruiser split in half. Commander Ilara Voss watched it happen on 3 different screens simultaneously. The ZCS Valor, a warship that had broken sieges on 14 worlds, carved open like meat under a butcher's blade. One moment it was whole, the next it wasn't. The beam that killed it was red, thin as a needle, precise as mathematics. "Sir," Ilara's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. "Valor is gone. Clean split, bow to stern, no explosion, just separation." Admiral Theron Kane stood frozen at the command platform. His hands gripped the railing until his knuckles went white. Around him, the bridge of the ZCS Dominion blazed with warning lights. Amber, red, crimson, every screen screaming the same impossible truth. They were losing. "Tactical," Kane said. His voice had gone quiet. "Dangerous. Confirm enemy casualties." The tactical officer's fingers moved across her console. Stopped. Moved again. Her face went pale. "0, sir. 0 confirmed kills. 0 damage assessments above superficial." Silence fell across the bridge. The kind of silence that precedes terrible decisions. Ilara pulled up the engagement timer. 11 minutes. 37 seconds. In that time, the Confederacy patrol fleet had lost 6 ships, 6 warships, 9,000 crew members gone. Erased with the clinical precision of something that had done this before, many times before, and the enemy 50 ships in perfect formation, not a single casualty. On the main view screen, they hung in the void like dark gods, sleek, angular, each one built for exactly one purpose, and every surface screamed that purpose without apology. There were no decorative flourishes, no ceremonial markings, no attempt at grandeur, just war, distilled to its purest, most terrifying form. "Admiral," the communications officer said, her voice shaking, "they're hailing us again. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was calm, measured, impossibly steady. "Zur Fleet, this is your final warning. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Kane's jaw worked. Ilara watched him from her station, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. Pride versus survival. Reputation versus the 6,000 souls still breathing on the remaining 4 ships. "All vessels," he said finally. Each word cost him something. "Fall back. Full retreat. Now." The bridge erupted in controlled chaos. Navigation plotted exit vectors. Engineering diverted power to engines. Weapons officers stood down with visible relief. Ilara kept her eyes on the human ships. They didn't pursue, didn't fire a parting shot. They simply watched, patient, still, like predators who knew the prey would return. As the Dominion turned away, as the surviving ships of the patrol fleet limped toward home with their dead and their wounded and their shattered certainty, one final transmission came through. "Return to your masters," the human voice said. "Tell them terror has returned. Tell them we remember everything." Terror. Earth. Human. The words humanity had spent 300 years being told were myths, legends, stories to frighten children, ancient superstitions from primitive civilizations. Ilara's hands trembled on her console. She thought of her grandmother, of a story told on a frontier colony 15 years ago, of words spoken by a dying woman that everyone had dismissed as fever dreams. They're real, child. They've always been real, and when they come back, the galaxy will never forget again. The Dominion jumped to hyperspace. Behind them in the darkness between stars, 50 human warships held their position, waiting. 72 hours earlier, Ilara Voss had not believed in ghosts. The lecture hall at Zur Military Academy held 300 cadets, tomorrow's officers, future leaders of the most powerful navy in known space. They sat in precise rows uniforms, immaculate attention locked forward. Professor Kelvin paced the stage, his voice carrying to the back rows with practiced authority. "The human myth," he said, pulling up a holographic display. "Perhaps the most persistent fantasy in galactic anthropology. For 200 years, certain, less rigorous scholars have insisted that this species once existed, that they built ships, explored space, even fought wars." Laughter rippled through the hall. Ilara didn't join it. "The archaeological record shows nothing," Kelvin continued. "No ruins, no artifacts, no genetic trace. What we do have are stories. Tales passed down by species who lacked scientific method, who filled gaps in their understanding with colorful fiction." He pulled up an image. An ancient star chart with a blue world marked in faded ink. Earth, the supposed homeworld. Surveys of this region show nothing but dead rocks and empty space. If humans ever existed, they left no mark on the universe whatsoever. A cadet raised his hand. "Professor, what about the terror protocols in the old military databases?" "Corrupted data," Kelvin said dismissively. "Glitches in archives so old they predate modern encryption. Some enterprising pirates have even used these protocols to create hoaxes. Clever theater, nothing more." Ilara stared at the blue world on the display. Something tugged at the edges of her memory. A voice, weak with illness, wrinkled hands holding hers. "Cadet Voss." She snapped to attention. "Sir, you seem distracted. Perhaps you'd like to share your thoughts on human mythology." Every eye in the hall turned to her. Ilara chose her words carefully. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted." "What if the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence? What if they simply left?" Kelvin's expression hardened. "Left, where cadet space is vast, but not infinite. A spacefaring civilization doesn't simply vanish without trace." "Unless they wanted to, sir." The professor's smile was condescending, professional, the smile of someone who'd heard this argument 1,000 times. "Cadet Voss, I understand the appeal of mystery, of wanting the universe to contain wonders we haven't discovered. But military officers deal in facts, in verifiable reality, not fairy tales." He dismissed the class. As the cadets filed out, Ilara lingered. Her hand moved to the data chip in her pocket. She'd found it 3 days ago, buried deep in the Academy's restricted archives. The file name had made her breath catch. "Classified Earth Genocide. Authorization Level 9 required." She hadn't been able to open it, didn't have clearance. But the name alone, genocide, not extinction, not natural death. Genocide implied action, implied victims, implied survivors. "Voss." She turned. Commander Hayes stood in the doorway, a data tablet in hand. "You've been assigned," he said. "Patrol duty. Admiral Kane's fleet. You ship out in 6 hours." Ilara's stomach dropped. Kane. The Kane. Legendary commander. 3 decades of service. 47 worlds brought into Confederacy control through military action. "Sir, I'm only a junior communications officer. Why would Admiral Kane—" "Your linguistic analysis scores, top of your class. Kane specifically requested someone who could decode non-standard transmissions." Hayes handed her the tablet. "Pack light. Patrol missions run 3 months minimum." She took the tablet, looked at the mission brief. 10 warships, routine sector sweep. Expected threats minimal. "Sector 447, she read aloud. Hayes nodded. "Edge of charted space. We've been picking up strange signals, probably just pulsar interference, but Kane wants it investigated properly." Strange signals. Edge of charted space. Ilara thought of her grandmother again. of that last conversation before the cancer took her. They'd been alone in the hospital room, the machines beeping their steady rhythm, the old woman's hand, papery thin, clutching Ilara's with surprising strength. "Promise me something," grandmother had whispered. "Anything. When you see them, and you will see them, child, I know you will remember that fear and respect are not the same thing. The galaxy feared them once. That's why it tried to kill them. But fear just makes monsters. Respect." She'd coughed a wet, painful sound. "Respect makes allies." "Grandmother, you're talking about the myths. Humans aren't real." The old woman's laugh had been bitter. "I found the records, Ilara. Buried deep in the military archives. My mother's mother witnessed it. The hunt, the extermination. She left journals. Testimony the Confederacy tried to burn." Her grip had tightened. "I've spent 40 years piecing together what they did, what we did, and I know they're still out there, waiting, building, remembering. Who gave the order?" But her grandmother had closed her eyes, wouldn't say more. 3 hours later, she was gone. Ilara had dismissed it as delirium. Fever dreams. The confusion of a dying mind. Now, holding the mission brief in her hands, she wasn't so sure. "Dismissed, Voss." "And Voss?" "Sir." Hayes's expression was unreadable. "Whatever you find out there, remember your oath. The Confederacy has kept the peace for 200 years. That peace is built on strength, on certainty, on knowing our place in the universe." "Yes, sir." But as she left, she couldn't shake the feeling that certainty was about to become a luxury no one could afford.
True.
The ZCS Dominion was beautiful in the way that weapons are beautiful. Form following function to its logical, lethal conclusion. 2 kilometers of reinforced hull. Plasma cannons capable of glassing a continent. Shield generators that could withstand a direct hit from a tactical nuclear device. Ilara stood in the hangar bay as crew bustled around her, watching supply crates being loaded with mechanical efficiency. The patrol fleet consisted of 10 ships, 3 cruisers, 4 destroyers, 2 frigates, and the Dominion, a dreadnought-class flagship. 15,000 crew members across 10 vessels, each ship carrying between 1,200 and 1,800 souls. Enough firepower to conquer a small star system. Against pirates, it was overwhelming force. Against the unknown, it felt suddenly fragile. "Voss." She turned. Admiral Kane approached with the measured stride of someone who'd walked battleship corridors for 30 years. He was shorter than she'd expected. Stockier. His face carried scars from 3 different actions. His eyes held the particular hardness of someone who'd made impossible decisions and learned to sleep afterward. "Sir," she saluted. He returned it with casual precision. "Your analysis scores are impressive. Top percentile in pattern recognition and linguistic extrapolation." "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet. If you're as good as your records suggest, you're about to earn every credit of your salary." He pulled up a holographic display between them. "These are the signals we've detected over the past 6 months. Frequency, intensity, and complexity all increasing." Ilara studied the waveforms. Her breath caught. "Sir, these aren't natural. This is language." "I know. But the structure, it doesn't match any known species in the Confederacy database." "I know that too." Kane's expression was unreadable. "Which means we're dealing with either very clever pirates or something new. Something that doesn't want to be found until now." "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted." "What if it's not new, sir? What if it's very, very old?" Kane studied her for a long moment. "You've been reading the restricted archives?" It wasn't a question. Ilara felt her stomach drop. "I have security alerts on certain files," Kane continued. "The Earth files, the Terra protocols. You tried to access them 3 days ago." "Sir, I can explain." "Don't." He waved a hand. "I accessed them too, 20 years ago, when I was a young officer who thought he knew better than his superiors." He looked away out at the stars, visible through the hangar's atmospheric shield. "Do you know what I found?" "No, sir. I didn't have clearance." "Nothing. Redacted files, corrupted data, gaps where information should be." He turned back to her. "But sometimes, Voss, what's hidden tells you more than what's shown. Someone went to great effort to bury that information, which means there was something worth burying. You think we're going to find them? I think we're going to find something, whether it's human or not." He shrugged. "Keep your analysis sharp. If these signals are a language, I want to know what they're saying before we make contact." "And if it's a warning, sir?" Kane's smile was cold. "Then we'll teach them that the Confederacy doesn't respond well to threats." He walked away. Ilara returned to studying the waveforms, her grandmother's voice echoing in her memory. Fear and respect are not the same thing. They jumped to Sector 447 6 hours later. The transition from hyperspace always felt like dying. A moment of absolute nothing. No sight, no sound, no sensation. Just void. Then reality snapped back with nauseating suddenness. Ilara steadied herself at her console as the Dominion's main view screen activated. Empty space greeted them. Dark. Cold. Utterly unremarkable. "All ships reporting green," the tactical officer announced. "Formation holding. No contacts on sensors." "Commence sweep pattern Delta," Kane ordered. "Communications begin signal analysis." Ilara activated her systems. The strange signals flooded her screens immediately. Stronger here, much stronger. She routed them through the decryption algorithms, watching patterns emerge and dissolve and emerge again. "Admiral, I'm getting structured repetition. This is definitely language. The computer's trying to find a match in our databases." Minutes passed. The algorithm cycled through thousands of linguistic patterns. Galactic standard, ancient dialects, trade languages, military codes, criminal cant, nothing matched. Then something stirred in the oldest archives. Databases so ancient that some officers didn't know they existed. Dust-covered files from the founding era of the Confederacy. The computer pinged. Ilara's blood ran cold. "Sir," she said quietly, "I have a match. Partial translation available." On screen, the words appeared. Simple, direct, undeniable. "This is human space. Turn back." The bridge fell absolutely silent. Kane stared at the message for 5 seconds. Then he laughed. It was a sharp, dismissive sound, designed to break tension before it could take root. "Clever," he said. "Pirates digging through old databases to intimidate patrol fleets. Creative, I'll give them that." "Sir," Ilara said, "the linguistic complexity suggests this isn't a hoax. The grammar patterns, the syntax, evolution, are exactly what clever pirates would program into a deception." Kane turned to tactical. "Find the source. We will teach these pretenders the cost of using Confederacy historical data for their games." But Ilara's hands were shaking. She'd seen something the others hadn't, hidden in the waveform analysis. A secondary pattern. Embedded metadata. A timestamp. The signal wasn't recent. It had been broadcasting for decades, maybe longer, repeating endlessly into the void, waiting for someone to hear. She opened her mouth to speak, to warn, to tell Kane that this was wrong, that they should listen to the message, that turning back might be the only intelligent choice. Then the sensors screamed. "Contact!" Tactical shouted. multiple contacts, bearing 273 Mark IV, range 60,000 kilometers and closing. Numbers. 3. No, wait. 10. No. The tactical officer's voice climbed toward panic. Sir, I'm reading 50 distinct signatures. Unknown classification, unknown drive types. They're just appearing. Like they were there all along and we couldn't see them. The main view screen shifted. And there, in the absolute darkness between stars, shapes resolved themselves. Ships. Not 3. Not 10. 50 vessels, each one a masterwork of lethal engineering. Dark hulls that seemed to drink the light around them. No excess angles, no wasted space. Every line, every curve calculated for maximum efficiency. They hung in formation like a wall of sleeping giants. Silent, still, their engines barely glowing, and they had been waiting. Ilara's console erupted with data. Power readings flooded her screens. She ran the analysis 3 times, certain the numbers were wrong. They weren't. Each human ship generated power output equivalent to 3 Confederacy flagships. "Admiral," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, their power signatures. We're outmatched. Severely." Kane's face had gone pale, but his voice remained steady. "Open a channel. Standard military hail. Let's see what these ghosts have to say for themselves." The communications officer's hands moved across her console. "Channel open, sir." Kane drew a breath. When he spoke, his voice filled the void with Confederacy authority, absolute, unquestioned, the voice of an empire that had never known a real rival. "Attention, unknown vessels. This is Admiral Theron Kane of the Zur Confederacy Patrol Fleet. You are operating in Confederacy-controlled space. Identify yourselves immediately and state your intentions or be fired upon." For a long moment, nothing. Just the hum of the bridge, the ragged breathing of the crew, the terrible weight of waiting. Then a response came. The voice was human, male, calm as still water. "Admiral Kane, you have entered the sovereign territory of the Terran Union. You were warned. This is your final opportunity. Withdraw your fleet immediately." Terran, Terra, Earth. The words sent ice through Ilara's veins. "Sir," she said urgently, "we should listen. We should negative." Kane's jaw set. "The Confederacy does not recognize territorial claims by unknown entities, and we do not retreat from empty threats." He turned to weapons. "All ships, prepare to engage. Show these imposters what happens when you challenge the Confederacy's authority." "Ah, sir, please." "That's an order, Commander Voss." And Ilara watched helpless as the safety protocols disengaged, as the weapons armed, as 10 Confederacy warships prepared to fire on something they didn't understand, on myths that had decided to stop being mythical. The human voice came one last time, still calm, still measured, but underneath something else, something ancient and patient and absolutely certain. "You've been warned, Admiral. What happens next is your choice." Kane's hand hovered over the firing authorization. "Fire!" And the galaxy changed forever. The High Council chamber on Zur Prime was built to hold thousands. Today, it held silence. Ilara stood at attention in the witness gallery, watching Admiral Kane deliver his report to the assembled leadership of the Confederacy. 300 Council's members, 50 admirals, a dozen governors, all of them staring at the holographic playback of the battle with expressions that shifted between disbelief and barely controlled panic. On the display, the cruiser Valor split in half, again and again, the footage looped in brutal clarity. 6 ships, Kane said, his voice carried through the chamber with the weight of undeniable fact. 9,000 crew members lost in 11 minutes and 37 seconds. The enemy suffered 0 casualties, 0 meaningful damage, Then Chancellor Dorian Vex sat in the central throne, his aged face carved from granite. 70 years of political maneuvering had taught him to hide emotion. But Ilara saw his hands, the way they gripped the armrests, white-knuckled, trembling just slightly. "You're certain," Vex said, each word carefully measured. "You're absolutely certain they were human?" "The linguistic analysis is conclusive, Chancellor. Commander Voss." Every eye in the chamber turned to her. Ilara stepped forward, her throat dry. "Sir, the communication patterns match extinct Earth languages from our oldest archives. But more than that, the evolutionary drift in their dialect suggests continuous usage for centuries. This isn't a reconstruction, it's a living language." A council member stood, Admiral Drexen, a massive figure with scars crossing his face like a roadmap of violence. "Then we mobilize everything," Drexen said. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Every ship, every weapon. We find where they're hiding, and we crush them before they can organize." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. "No!" The word came from Vex, quiet, final. "Chancellor!" Drexen's confusion was evident. Vex stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried the exhaustion of someone about to confess a terrible sin. "Because this is not the first time we've encountered them." The chamber erupted. Shouts, questions, denials. Vex raised a hand, and the noise died like a candle flame in vacuum. 300 years ago," he continued, "the Confederacy faced a choice: coexist with a species whose technological advancement threatened our supremacy, or eliminate the threat permanently." He paused. "We chose elimination." Ilara felt the floor tilt beneath her. She grabbed the railing to steady herself. "The operation was called Scorched Earth, 47 colony worlds, 2.1 billion casualties. We hunted them to the edge of known space and beyond, and when we thought we'd finished..." Vex gestured at the battle footage. "Apparently we were wrong." "How many survived?" someone asked. "Unknown. Our final estimates suggested less than 10%. Perhaps 300 million scattered across deep space." Vex's expression was haunted. "We declared them extinct, erased the records, built our peace on a foundation of genocide." The silence that followed was absolute. Ilara's mind reeled. Her grandmother's words, the classified files, the careful erasure of history, all of it suddenly horrifically clear. "Then we finish it," Drexen said into the quiet. "We find every last one, and what?" Kane interrupted. His voice cut like a blade. "Admiral Drexen, they defeated my patrol fleet without suffering a scratch. 50 ships, against our 10. And those 50 moved with coordination I've never seen, precision that suggests extensive training. Advanced weapons, superior engines." He pulled up tactical data. "Each human vessel generates power equivalent to 3 of our flagships. Their hulls absorbed direct plasma hits without buckling. Their weapons have range and accuracy beyond our current capabilities." Kane's jaw worked. This is not a ragtag group of survivors. This is a military force that has spent 3 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. "Then what do you suggest?" Vex asked. "We negotiate. We sue for peace. We assemble the final campaign fleet." Drexen's voice brooked no argument. "Every ship, every weapon, every crew member we can spare. 2,000 warships, 300,000 souls. We meet them with overwhelming force, and we show them that the Confederacy does not bow to ghosts." Vex looked at Kane. "Admiral." Kane hesitated. Ilara watched him struggle. Pride against pragmatism, honor against survival. If we mobilize everything, he said finally, if we commit our full strength and lose, the Confederacy collapses, internal rebellions, external invasions, everything falls apart. Then we don't lose, Drexen said simply. The vote was called. Elara watched hands rise, one by one, two by one, until the chamber bloomed with raised arms. The decision was made. 2,000 ships, the largest military force assembled in 200 years. All directed at a species the Confederacy had tried to exterminate. Vex dismissed the council. As the chamber emptied, Elara remained. She had to know, had to understand. She waited until only Vex remained. Then she approached. Chancellor. He looked up, tired, old, defeated in ways that had nothing to do with military defeat. Commander Voss, I wondered if you'd come. Why? The word burst from her. Why try to kill them all? Why not just coexist? Vex smiled without humor. Because they were better than us, smarter, more innovative, more adaptable, and we were afraid that given time they would replace us as the dominant power. He looked at his hands. Fear makes monsters of us all. My grandmother was there. Wasn't she at the edge of space? She saw them run. Many were there. Most died keeping the secret. Your grandmother. He paused. She was one of the few who argued against the genocide. It cost her career, nearly cost her life. Elara felt tears sting her eyes. She never told me. Because you joined the military? Because you believed in the Confederacy? She didn't want to destroy that faith. Vex stood. But now you know. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Elara had no answer. She returned to her quarters and did something that would have gotten her executed 3 hours ago. She hacked the classified files. Her security clearance had been upgraded after the battle report. Senior analyst, level 7 access. Not enough for the deepest archives, but enough to crack the encryption if she was clever. And Elara was very clever. The files opened like a tomb. Operation Scorched Earth, detailed reports, colony coordinates, casualty estimates, ships deployed, weapons used. A systematic, calculated extermination carried out with bureaucratic efficiency. She read for 4 hours, each page another weight on her chest. By the end, she could barely breathe. But it was the final file that broke her. A communication intercept from the last human colony ship before it jumped to deep space, before it vanished into the unknown. The message was brief. 13 words that had survived 300 years of attempted erasure. We will remember. We will return. We will not repeat your mistakes. Not a threat, a promise. Elara sat in the darkness of her quarters, the message glowing on her screen. And she understood. They hadn't returned for revenge. If they wanted revenge, they would have destroyed Kane's fleet utterly, would have pressed the attack, would have struck at Zur Prime while the Confederacy was still reeling. Instead, they'd let the survivors go. Let them carry the message. Let them spread the word that humanity was back. They wanted the Confederacy to know, to understand, to remember what had been forgotten. Her console chimed. Encrypted message. Unknown origin. She almost didn't open it. But curiosity, the same curiosity that had driven her to the archives, won out. The message was simple, a set of coordinates, and 5 words. Let them come to us. The coordinates were for Kale Rift, a region of shattered moons and ancient asteroid fields, unstable, difficult to navigate, terrible place for a battle, which meant it was exactly where the humans wanted to fight. Elara stared at the message. Then she understood something else. Something that made her blood run cold. This entire thing was choreographed. The patrol encounter, the council decision, the massive mobilization. All of it exactly what the humans had anticipated, maybe even engineered. They weren't just ready for this fight, they wanted it. 3 months passed like a held breath. Across 100 worlds, shipyards ran without pause. Old warships pulled from storage. New designs rushed into production. Crews trained in simulators that ran scenario after scenario of fleet combat against superior technology. Ilara watched it all from the bridge of the Dominion, now redesignated as Supreme Admiral Kane's flagship for the final campaign fleet. Her promotion had come with the mobilization. Senior Tactical Analyst. Direct access to command decisions, a position that would have been the highlight of her career. Instead, it felt like being given a front-row seat to a disaster she couldn't prevent. She'd tried to warn Kane about the coordinates, about the message. He'd listened patiently, then dismissed her concerns. "Of course they want us to attack there," he'd said. "It's defensible terrain, but we have numbers, 2,000 ships Voss. Even if they have superior technology, they can't be everywhere at once. We'll overwhelm them with sheer force." But Ilara had run the simulations, in her quarters, alone, using stolen tactical data and worst-case assumptions. Every simulation ended the same way. She'd tried one more time, requested a private meeting, laid out her analysis. Kane had looked at her data for a long time. Then he'd sighed. "You're probably right," he'd said quietly. "But I have my orders. The Council has decided 2,000 ships are being assembled. Families are saying goodbye. If I refuse now, it destroys morale, creates political chaos. And if you're wrong, if we can win through numbers, then backing down makes us look weak to every potential enemy in the galaxy. And if I'm right, sir, if we lose, then we lose." He'd met her eyes. "But we'll lose trying to protect what we built, even if that foundation is rotten." She'd had no response to that. Now, standing on the bridge as the final campaign fleet assembled in formation, Ilara watched 2,000 warships arrange themselves in perfect order, each one a masterpiece of engineering, each one crewed by people who believed they were defending civilization, each one potentially sailing toward annihilation. "Final count," Kane said. 2,014 ships reporting ready, sir. 307,000 crew. Weapons at full capacity. Shields optimal." Kane nodded. Turned to Ilara. "Transmit coordinates to the fleet. We jump in 30 minutes. "Sir." "That's an order, Commander." She transmitted the coordinates. Watched them propagate through the fleet network. Watched 2,000 ships prepare to jump to Kale Rift, to the trap. Her console chimed privately. She glanced down. Another message. Same encrypted source. "You tried to warn them. Remember that you tried." The signature included a name this time. Admiral Cassiel Rain, Terran Union. Ilara's hands went cold. The enemy commander knew who she was, knew she'd tried to stop this, knew she'd failed. What else did they know? Jump in 10. The navigation officer announced. Ilara closed the message, gripped her console, and prayed to God she didn't believe in that her simulations were wrong. The fleet jumped. The transition took 3 seconds. When reality snapped back, Ilara's first thought was that the Kale Rift was beautiful. Shattered moons drifted in slow orbits. Asteroid fields sparkled with ice and mineral deposits. The debris of some ancient cataclysm spread across millions of kilometers in patterns that looked almost deliberate. Her second thought was that they were doomed. "Sensors," Kane barked. "Scanning, sir. Multiple contacts. Bearing. Multiple bearings." They're scattered throughout the asteroid field. Numbers. 287 distinct signatures, all matching the drive profiles from the first encounter. 287 against 2,000. The odds should have been comforting. 7-1 in the Confederacy's favor. Overwhelming numerical superiority. Instead, Elara felt her stomach drop. Kane studied the tactical display. The human ships were dispersed, no central formation. Each vessel positioned among the asteroids with clear firing lanes but protected by rock. It looked random, scattered, desperate. "They're trying to use the terrain," Drexen's voice came through the fleet channel. "They know they can't fight us in open space, so they're hiding in the debris." "Then we dig them out," Kane said. "All ships advance. Combat spread formation, weapons free, engage any hostile contact." 2,000 warships began to move, and Elara saw it. The positioning wasn't random. Each human ship covered another ship's vulnerable angles. The asteroids weren't cover, they were part of the formation. And the spacing, the precise spacing. "Sir," she said urgently, "their formation. It's mathematically perfect. Every ship protects every other ship. There are no weak points, no exposed flanks. This is—" "Noted, Commander. But they're still outnumbered. We press the attack." The Confederacy fleet advanced into the asteroid field. Weapons armed, shields raised, 2,000 ships against 287. The humans didn't move. They waited. Elara's sensors picked up something, a faint power spike from the nearest asteroid cluster. Then another. Then dozens. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures in the asteroids themselves. Multiple sources. The first Confederacy cruiser opened fire. Blue-white plasma bolts streaked through space, impacted a human destroyer. The bolts splashed off the hull like water off steel. No damage, not even scorch marks. Shields holding tactical reported from the cruiser. Target is undamaged. Impossible. We hit them with full batteries at optimal range." The human destroyer fired back. One shot. The cruiser came apart. Not an explosion. Not dramatic destruction. Just structural failure. The ship's spine broke. Compartments vented atmosphere, and then it was tumbling dead through space. "All ships." Kane's voice filled the fleet channel. "Focus fire, concentrated bombardment. Overwhelm their defenses." 2,000 ships opened fire. The Kale Rift turned into light. Plasma bolts, missiles, beam weapons, a storm of destructive energy that would have shattered planets. Asteroids caught in the crossfire simply ceased to exist. The void blazed with the fury of an empire that had never known defeat. When the light faded, Elara checked her sensors. Human casualties 0. They'd moved, all of them, in perfect synchronization. The entire formation had shifted while the Confederacy was firing, relocated to different positions among the asteroids, as if they'd known exactly where the attacks would come before they were launched. "Impossible," the tactical officer breathed. "They predicted our fire patterns, all of them, simultaneously." "Then they can't predict random fire," Kane said. "All ships weapons free, independent targeting, saturate the field." Chaos erupted. 2,000 ships firing independently, no coordination, just overwhelming volume. Surely something would hit. The humans responded. Not with volume, with precision. Elara watched it unfold on her tactical display. Each human ship selected a Confederacy target, not randomly, deliberately. Communication hubs, coordination vessels, fuel tankers, ships whose destruction would create cascade failures in the fleet's operational capability. "They're not fighting the fleet," she whispered. "They're disassembling it." One by one, key Confederacy ships died, and with each death, portions of the fleet lost coordination. Captains couldn't reach each other. Destroyers ran low on fuel. Entire squadrons found themselves isolated, vulnerable. 10 minutes into the battle, the Confederacy had lost 143 ships, The humans had lost 2, both only damaged, not destroyed. "Sir," the communications officer turned to Kane, her face pale.
"Admiral, they're broadcasting on our encrypted channels, all of them, every frequency we're using."
"What are they saying?"
The voice that filled the bridge was female, calm, carrying the absolute certainty of someone who held all the cards and knew it. "Admiral Kane, this is Admiral Cassiel Rain of the Terran Union. Every order you give, we hear. Every tactic you attempt, we've already countered. Every move you make, we predicted 3 months ago." Kane's hands gripped the command console. "You chose this battlefield," Rain continued, "but we built it. Welcome to Kale Rift, Admiral. We've been preparing it for 47 years, specifically for this moment." "She's bluffing." Drexen's voice came through. "They can't possibly—" He never finished the sentence, because the asteroids came alive. All around the Confederacy fleet, rock faces split open, hidden panels retracted, and from within the asteroids themselves, weapons platforms emerged, hundreds of them. Railguns, missile tubes, torpedo launchers, beam emitters, all built into the asteroids, camouflaged so perfectly that Confederacy sensors had registered them as natural formations. Ilara checked her count. 340 platforms, each one independently targeting, each one already armed and locked onto Confederacy ships. "Dear God," she whispered. "Sir," Tactical screamed. "Weapons platforms activating throughout the field. Count 340. They're targeting us." The platforms fired, and the Kale Rift became a killing ground. Not random fire, coordinated, precise. Each platform working in conjunction with the human ships, creating crossfires, eliminating escape routes, herding the Confederacy fleet into tighter and tighter formations where they became easier targets. Ships died, dozens, then scores, then hundreds. Kane watched his fleet come apart, watched the tactical display bleed from green to amber to red, watched thousands of lives end in fire and vacuum. "All ships," he said. His voice had gone quiet. "Dead. Emergency scatter. Break formation. Every captain for themselves. Get out of the kill zone." But there was no safe zone. Every direction led to more fire, more platforms, more human ships waiting with that terrible patient precision. Ilara's console showed the statistics in real time, a ledger of disaster. 15 minutes elapsed. Confederacy losses 470 ships. Terran losses 11 ships. The mathematics were undeniable. The Confederacy was being systematically destroyed. Kane looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw him understand, saw him recognize that she'd been right, that this had always been a trap, that they'd walked into it with eyes open because pride and politics demanded it. "You tried to warn me," he said. "Yes, sir." "I should have listened." "Yes, sir." He turned back to the display, to the slaughter, and made the only decision left. But before he could give the order, something changed. The human ships stopped firing, all of them, simultaneously. They pulled back, created distance, held position. The platforms went silent. Across the battlefield, Confederacy ships drifted, damaged, bleeding, but alive. And into the sudden, terrible silence, Cassiel Rain's voice came once more. "Admiral Kane, we can destroy you all. Our tactical models give you 23 minutes until complete annihilation. We choose not to. Return to your space. Tell your leaders what you saw here. And remember, we showed restraint today. We were capable of showing the alternative." The transmission ended. Kane stood frozen, his fleet in ruins around him, his certainty shattered. Ilara watched the human ships hold their position, not pursuing, not pressing their advantage, just waiting for the Confederacy to choose, to learn, to remember. The retreat was silent.
Elara stood at her station on the Dominion's bridge, watching the tactical display as what remained of the final campaign fleet limped away from Kale Rift. 1,153 ships, from 2,847 vessels destroyed in 43 minutes of combat. 127,000 souls gone. The human fleet held position, not pursuing, not firing final volleys, just watching with that terrible patient stillness. Admiral Kane sat in his command chair like a statue. He hadn't moved in 17 minutes, hadn't given orders, hadn't spoken. His eyes fixed on the view screen, where the human ships grew smaller with distance. Finally, he stirred. Casualties. The tactical officer's voice shook. Confirmed dead 127,412. Wounded 68,391. Ships destroyed 847. Ships damaged beyond immediate repair 423. And there's 11 ships destroyed. Estimated casualties 2,400. The numbers hung in the air like an accusation. Ship losses 77-1. Personnel losses 53-1. Either way, a massacre. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving distress calls from damaged ships. Life support failing on 47 vessels. They're requesting immediate rescue." Kane's jaw worked. "Redirect all functional ships to rescue operations. Get our people out." "Sir, the humans are letting us leave." Kane's voice was hollow. "They made that clear. They could finish us right now if they wanted. They don't want to." He looked at Elara. "Because dead martyrs inspire resistance. Living witnesses spread fear." Elara said nothing. What could she say? That she'd warned him, that she'd known this would happen. It didn't matter now. "Prepare a message to Zur Prime," Kane continued. "Encrypt it with the highest security protocols. Tell them we engaged the human fleet at Kale Rift. Tell them we lost." He paused. "Tell them the myths are real, and they're stronger than anything we were prepared to face," the message was transmitted. And across the Confederacy, in council chambers and military headquarters and civilian homes, a single word spread like wildfire. Humans. The journey back to Zur Prime took 6 days. 6 days of silence punctuated by funeral services. They held them every 4 hours. Captains' eulogies for the dead. Names read aloud. So many names. Elara attended each one. Listened to the litany of loss, watched bodies consigned to space in sealed containers because they couldn't take them all home. On the 3rd day, she received another message. Same encrypted source, same impossible-to-trace origin. It contained 2 things. First, tactical analysis of the battle. Not from the Confederacy perspective, from the human side. Every decision explained. Every trap illustrated. A lesson in warfare taught by those who'd spent 300 years perfecting the craft. Second, a single line of text. "You don't have to serve an empire built on genocide. When you're ready, there's a place for you here." Elara stared at the message for an hour. Then she deleted it. Then she recovered it from the deletion cache. Then she encrypted it in her personal files where no one else could find it. She wasn't ready to decide. Not yet. But the seed was planted. The Prime burned. Not literally, but the streets erupted with something just as destructive. Riots, protests, panic. Word of the defeat had leaked despite the encryption. Details had followed. The scale of the loss, the impossibility of the battle, the fact that humans, myths, legends, stories had destroyed the most powerful military force ever assembled. Elara watched from the shuttle as they approached the capital. Smoke rose from a dozen districts. Security forces tried to maintain order. Failed. The Empire was fracturing in real time. The High Council convened an emergency session 12 hours after the fleet's return.
This time the chamber wasn't full. Half the seats were empty. Governors had fled to their home worlds. Admirals were dealing with mutinies in their own fleets. Council members faced angry populations demanding answers. Chancellor Vex looked like he'd aged 20 years. Admiral Kane delivered his after-action report with clinical precision. No emotion, just facts, numbers, tactical analysis. The council listened in growing horror. When he finished, silence fell. Then Admiral Drexen stood, the massive warrior who'd pushed for total war. His face was grey. His hands trembled. "We sent 2,000 ships," he said. His voice cracked. "I told you we would overwhelm them. I told you numbers would win." He looked at his hands, at the blood that wasn't visible, but everyone knew was there. "I was wrong, and 127,000 people paid for my arrogance." He removed his admiral's insignia, placed it on the table. "I resign, effective immediately." Vex didn't argue, just nodded. "We can't fight them," someone said from the back, a junior council member, voice shaking. "We can't negotiate with them. What do? "We listen," Elara said. Every eye turned to her. She hadn't planned to speak, but the words came anyway. "Commander Voss," Vex said. "You have something to add?" "Permission to speak freely, Chancellor?" "Granted." Elara stood, took a breath. "They let us go. They could have killed every last one of us, ended the Confederacy fleet in 43 minutes, but they didn't, because that's not what they want." "Then what do they want?" Vex asked. "To be remembered, to ensure what happened to them never happens to anyone else." She pulled up the historical files, displayed them for the entire council. 300 years ago, we tried to exterminate them. We failed. They survived. They rebuilt, and now they're back. Not for revenge, for reckoning. How do you know this? Because if they wanted revenge, Zur Prime would already be ash. The truth of it settled over the chamber like ash itself. "Then we negotiate," Vex said. "We send envoys. We sue for peace. We—" His console chimed. Incoming transmission. Terran source. The council froze. "Put it through," Vex said. The holographic display activated, and there, standing in what looked like a conference room, were two figures. One was a woman in a military uniform. Tall, strong, eyes like winter ice, Admiral Cassiel Rain. The other was a man in civilian clothes, older, scholar's bearing, weathered face carrying the weight of history. He spoke first. "Chancellor Vex, members of the High Council, I am Dr. Matthias Kor, diplomatic representative of the Terran Union." His voice was measured, calm. "We're prepared to discuss terms, but first we need to establish something fundamental. Do you acknowledge what was done to our people 300 years ago?" Vex stood, met Kor's gaze through the display. "Yes. The Confederacy attempted genocide against the human species. We nearly succeeded, and we spent 3 centuries hiding that crime. Why? Fear of being judged, of losing legitimacy, of facing consequences. And now," Vex spread his hands, "now we face those consequences regardless. Your existence proves our lies. Your victory proves our weakness. We have nothing left but truth." Kor nodded slowly. "Then here is our truth, Chancellor. We didn't return to conquer your empire. We returned to ensure the galaxy remembers us, remembers what you did, remembers that erasure of peoples, of histories, of entire species is not something the universe forgets. What do you want from us? Change, real change. Not cosmetic reforms, not apologies without action." Rain stepped forward. Her voice was steel.
End the slave systems, all of them. Grant autonomy to subjugated worlds. Establish tribunals for war crimes. Open your archives to independent review, and integrate into a new framework not an empire, but a federation of equals. And if we refuse, we don't need to conquer you, Kor said. We've already broken you. Your outer provinces are seceding as we speak. Slave worlds are rising. Allied governments are questioning their treaties. The Confederacy is collapsing from within. He leaned forward. We're offering you the chance to guide that collapse, to shape what comes next, to be remembered as the generation that ended an empire instead of the one that destroyed a future. Vex was quiet for a long moment. You're not giving us a choice. Everyone has a choice, Rain said. We're giving you a better option than your predecessors gave us. They chose genocide. You can choose transformation. How long do we have to decide? You've already decided, Chancellor. You knew when you called this meeting. The question is whether you have the courage to announce it. Vex looked around the chamber. At the depleted council, the empty seats, the faces marked by defeat and doubt. Then he looked at Ilara. She nodded. Very well, Vex said. The Confederacy agrees to your terms, in full, without reservation. He straightened. I will announce my resignation immediately, and propose a transition government tasked with implementing these changes. We'll send advisors, Kor said. Not conquerors, not occupiers, people who've lived through what you're about to attempt, who can help navigate the transformation. And the tribunal? Someone asked. Who stands trial? That's for the new government to decide, Rain said. We want justice, not revenge. There's a difference. The transmission ended. The council sat in stunned silence. Then slowly, Vex began to clap. Others joined. Not celebration. Something else. Acknowledgement. Of ending. Of beginning. Of the terrifying freedom that comes when old certainties crumble. Ilara slipped out quietly. She had a decision to make. She found Kane in the officer's lounge staring at a glass of amber liquid he hadn't touched. Commander Voss? Sir, you're leaving, aren't you? She hadn't told anyone, hadn't made it official, but Kane had always been perceptive. Yes, sir. To join them, to be a bridge between what was and what's coming. Kane nodded, picked up his glass, set it down again without drinking. I don't blame you. Hell, if I were your age, I might do the same. He looked at her. They contacted you during the retreat, didn't they? How did you know? Because they contacted me too, offered me a position, strategic advisor, helped design defensive frameworks for the new federation. He smiled without humor. I declined. Too much blood on my hands. But you, Voss, you tried to stop this. You warned us. They know that. That's why they want you. Sir, don't apologize. You're making the right choice. He stood, extended his hand. Go. Build something better. And when people ask about the Confederacy, about what we were, he paused. Tell them we were what happens when empires forget they're built on people, not the other way around. She shook his hand, then left. 3 months later, Ilara stood on Earth. The sky was blue. Actually blue. Not the tinted blue of atmospheric processes or the simulated blue of dome colonies. Natural blue. Clouds drifted white and lazy. The air smelled like growing things. She'd spent her entire life in space, on metal worlds and artificial habitats. She'd never felt real wind before, never stood under an open sky. It was terrifying and beautiful. First time planet-side. She turned. Doctor. Kor approached with the easy stride of someone who'd walked on planets his whole life. Yes, is it always this big? He smiled. Earth is actually small for a habitable world. But yes,
It takes adjustment. They walked together through what had once been San Francisco. The city was rebuilt, modern, but it carried echoes of older architecture, styles from before the genocide, before the flight to deep space. "The memorial is this way," Core said. They crossed a bridge. Below, water moved in patterns that owed nothing to engineering. Seabirds wheeled overhead. Ilara watched them with something like wonder. The memorial occupied an entire island. It was simple, elegant, devastating. A circular wall, black stone, stretching 3 kilometers in circumference. And on that wall, carved in letters small enough that you had to stand close to read them, were names. 2.1 billion names, every human killed in the genocide, listed alphabetically, no rank, no position, just names. And above each section, the colony where they died. Ilara stood before the wall, started reading. Abbott James, Abbott Sarah, Abbott William, Adams Chen, Adams Elizabeth. The names blurred, became a river, a litany, an accusation and a memorial and a promise all at once. "We built this first," Core said quietly. "Before the ships, before the weapons, before the plan to return. We built this, so we'd never forget why we were building everything else." How long did it take? 40 years, each name verified, each person researched. Some we only had fragments of data. Birth certificates, school records, DNA samples, but we found them all, remembered them all. Ilara's eyes burned. "My grandmother. She was there, at the edge of space. She tried to stop it." "What was her name?" "Mira Voss." Core pulled up a data pad, searched. "She's in our records. Not a victim, a protester. Spoke against the genocide in the Confederacy Senate. Lost her position. Was blacklisted." He showed Ilara the file. "We remember her too. The ones who tried, who resisted, who chose conscience over comfort." Something broke in Ilara's chest. She'd spent months holding it together. Through the battle, the retreat, the collapse, the transformation. But standing here, seeing the enormity of what had been done, what her government had tried to erase. She wept. Core didn't try to comfort her, just stood nearby. Let her grieve. When she could breathe again, she asked, "Why did you let us go at Kale Rift? Why show mercy?" "Because we learned something during our 300 years in exile," Core said. "Revenge creates cycles. You kill us. We kill you. Someone kills us for killing you. On and on, until nothing remains but ash and bitterness." He gestured at the memorial. "These people died for nothing, for fear, for pride, for the arrogance of those who believed might made right. We refuse to add to their number. We refuse to become what killed them." "So you came back for remembrance?" "We came back to prove something," Core said. "That strength without wisdom builds only temporary empires. But wisdom with strength that changes galaxies forever." 6 months after the battle, the Terran Union consisted of 140 worlds. Not conquered, not occupied, joined. Ilara travelled to many of them. Her role as liaison took her to former slave colonies, where populations learned self-governance for the first time, to frontier worlds where Terran advisors helped establish democratic institutions, to industrial centers where new economic frameworks replaced extraction with partnership. She saw 23 million freed slaves, saw them board ships to new homes, saw children who'd been born in chains learn to read, to dream, to plan futures their parents couldn't have imagined. It wasn't perfect. There were stumbles, conflicts, former Confederacy officials who resisted, worlds that struggled with freedom after generations of oppression, violence in some regions, chaos in others. But it was changing. The galaxy was changing. And one day, standing on a space station at the border between old Confederacy space and the new Federation, Elara received a message from Admiral Rain. "Report to flagship. We have a situation." The situation was visible on every sensor screen. At the edge of known space, a fleet was forming, ships from a dozen different empires, powers that had watched the Confederacy fall, that had seen humanity's return, that had made calculations. "They're allying," Rain said. "Calm as ever. 7 major empires, pooling resources, building a combined fleet." "How many ships?" "Current estimates 5,000. Growing." Elara felt ice in her stomach. "That's more than twice what the Confederacy sent." "Yes." "Can we win?" Rain smiled. It was not a comforting expression. "Commander Voss, we spent 300 years preparing to break the Confederacy. And we succeeded. These empires watched that happen. They've studied our tactics, our technology, our strategy. They're not making the same mistakes." "Then what do? We prepare, we adapt, we remember why we're doing this." Rain pulled up a star map, showed the expanding Terran Union, the freed worlds, the new democracies, the places where slavery had ended, where oppression had lifted. "We've proven something they can't fight with weapons, that a better way is possible, that empires built on exploitation eventually collapse, that principles outlast power. You think that's enough?" "I think it has to be." Rain looked at Elara. "When they come, and they will come, we'll fight. We'll win or lose. But either way, we've already changed the galaxy. Put the idea out there that things can be different, that people matter more than power, that memory is stronger than erasure." She gestured at the tactical display, at the gathering enemy fleet. "Let them come, Commander. Let them try to stop what we've started. They'll learn what the Confederacy learned, what every empire eventually learns." "What's that, Admiral? That you can destroy ships, you can kill armies, you can burn worlds." In Rain's expression was iron. "But you cannot kill an idea whose time has come. And the idea that the galaxy deserves better than endless empire, that time is now." Elara returned to Earth one final time before the new war began. She stood before the memorial again, read names she'd memorized, thought about her grandmother, about choice, about legacy. The wind moved through nearby trees. Real wind, real trees. A real world that had survived genocide and returned stronger. She thought about the words carved at the memorial's entrance. The promise humanity had made before fleeing into deep space. "We will remember. We will return. We will not repeat your mistakes." They'd kept that promise, all of it. As she left, Elara added her own silent vow to theirs. Whatever came next, whatever fleets gathered at the borders, whatever wars needed fighting or peace needed building, she would remember too. The myths were real. They had always been real. And they were patient. The galaxy was about to learn just how patient they could be. In deep space, 5,000 ships assembled. On Earth, Admiral Rain studied tactical projections. Across 140 worlds, people looked up at stars that suddenly felt less empty. And in the silence between heartbeats, in the space between decisions, in that moment before history turned again, a single truth echoed through the void. Empires fall, principles endure. The return of terror was not an ending, it was a beginning, and the galaxy would never forget again.